Hi, I'm Isolde. I built a fashion empire from nothing. Every design, every client, every sleepless night was mine. But my own sister, she tried to erase me from it all. She took my name off the paperwork, stole my collection, even told people I'd lost my mind. And the worst part? My mother helped her do it. You think betrayal hurts? Try being replaced in your own story, while they smile on national TV. What would you do if the people you trusted most were the ones quietly destroying everything you worked for? I'd been up since 5 a.m. rehearing every word I planned to say. My slides were crisp, numbered, with just the right amount of color to feel alive, but not desperate. I'd picked out a navy dress, not flashy, just strong. This meeting, I thought, was mine to lead. After everything I'd built, the company deserved to hear my voice. When I walked into the glass-walled conference room, the chairs were still empty, and the sunlight bounced clean off the steel accents like it was rooting for me. I set my laptop at the head of the table and took one breath, just one, before everything shifted. The door opened behind me. Preston Blythe, one of our oldest investors, walked in with his signature leather folio tucked under his arm. He smiled and nodded. "Morning, Isolde." I nodded back, confident. A few minutes later, others trickled in. Finance lead, our new intern, someone from legal. Then Velda arrived. My sister never just entered a room. She floated in like she owned the air. She wore a cream pantsuit with her signature wine-colored lips, carrying nothing but her phone. No laptop, no notes. Just that fake smile I knew too well. She took the seat to my right, adjusted her cufflinks, and gave me a glance. "You look tense," she whispered. "Breathe, sis." Preston cleared his throat. "Let's get started. Excited to hear the strategic update." I stood and connected my laptop to the screen. But as the projector fired up, my slides didn't appear. Instead, a glossy title slide in deep red flashed, "Strategic Vision for IR Studio" by Velda Murnane. My hand froze on the mouse. I looked around, confused. Preston's brow furrowed. "Wait, isn't this Isolde's presentation?" Velda gave a soft chuckle. "Oh, we collaborated, but I'll take the lead this time. Don't worry, I've got it." She didn't even look at me. I tried to speak, but she held a hand up, barely turning her head. "Let's keep momentum. Time's tight." She clicked forward into the first slide, and the room tilted on its axis. For 25 minutes, I sat silently while she presented the work I'd built from scratch. She misquoted numbers, glossed over strategy points, and replaced my design board mock-ups with cheap Canva graphics. She even called herself a founding mind behind IR Studio, a phrase I'd never heard her say before, but no one questioned her. When it ended, polite applause broke out. Preston leaned over to me. "You okay?" I wanted to laugh or scream, but I nodded. "Sure," I said, with a smile I didn't feel. As everyone stood to leave, I turned to Velda. "What was that?" She patted her bag and raised an eyebrow. "It's called initiative, darling. Try it sometime." I turned to leave when I felt a hand on my elbow. Marjorie, our mother, pulled me gently aside. She wore her pearls and that passive-aggressive warmth she reserved for dinner parties. "You're too emotional," she whispered. "Velda's just more composed, and that's what this company needs right now." I stared at her like I was seeing her for the first time. My mother, the woman who used to brush my hair and say I was her wildflower, was now gently suggesting I didn't belong in the garden anymore. I didn't answer her. I didn't cry. I walked out. Each step echoed off the marble floors like a verdict. I passed the elevator, took the stairs instead. Let the burn in my legs keep me from screaming. By the time I got to the parking garage, I realized I still had my clicker in my hand, the one I never got to use. I sat in my car with the engine off for 45 minutes. I watched people come and go. At one point, I saw Velda walking toward the valet, laughing into her phone. She didn't see me. When I finally drove home, I didn't turn on music. I needed the silence to stretch out over the whole car. Back at the condo, I dropped my bag on the floor and sat in front of my laptop. My Google Calendar had been wiped. No investor follow-ups, no marketing calls, nothing. Even the lunch with the photographer I'd booked weeks ago. Gone. I didn't flinch. I just closed the laptop. Then I sat there for a while, long enough for the sun to shift across the windowsill, And when I finally stood up, I wasn't the same woman who'd walked into that meeting. She thought she'd silenced me. What she didn't know was, I never left the room. The next morning came without meaning. I moved through it on muscle memory, brushed my teeth, tied my hair back, slipped on a blazer I didn't bother to steam. I drove straight to the office, not because I had a meeting, but because I needed something to make sense again. The streets of Santa Monica looked the same, but I didn't. The receptionist looked up the moment I walked in, and her expression froze mid-smile. "Oh, hi, Miss Murnane." I nodded. "Can you buzz me through?" Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Actually, Velda said to let you know you've been placed on extended leave. Your keycard's been suspended." I blinked. Extended leave? I hadn't requested a thing. I didn't even take a sick day when I had shingles 3 years ago. She gave a helpless half shrug. "I just do what I'm told. HR's supposed to follow up with you. Maybe check your inbox." I didn't yell. I didn't even flinch. I smiled. "Thanks. No worries." I turned slowly, aware of the 2 interns by the elevator watching. I recognized the look in their eyes. Confusion, pity, and something worse. Acceptance. Like they'd already been coached on what version of the story to believe. Back in my car, I sat without starting the engine. I stared at the building for a few seconds, then opened my phone, pulled up my backup login to our project platform. It blinked twice before showing a red banner across the screen. Access revoked. Every folder I'd ever built, gone. The pitch decks, the design archives, the raw campaign videos, all inaccessible. I tried the internal contact directory. Nothing. I clicked into the org chart. At the top, Executive Leadership Velda Murnane. No co-founder, no Isolde. It wasn't just suspension, it was erasure. I printed the chart on my home printer, slow and grinding, like it felt the weight of what it was exposing. I pulled out a pen and circled the header. In the margin, I wrote in all caps, "Do they think I won't fight?" But a part of me already knew the answer. They didn't think I wouldn't fight. They were counting on me being too stunned to start. I sat back, my hand gripping the edge of the counter. This wasn't sabotage. This was a slow-motion heist dressed up like company restructuring. I needed clarity, something legal, someone who knew what to look for. I called Tom Berkeley, a real estate attorney I'd used 5 years back when I bought my loft. We weren't close, but he was clean and discreet. "Tom, it's Isolde. I need a favor, quiet and fast." "Of course. What kind of favor?" "Company ownership records, IR studio. Can you get them?" "Give me 20 minutes. I paced while I waited, walking the same 10 steps across my living room over and over again. I didn't even hear the ding when his email landed. I just refreshed my inbox out of habit, and there it was. Attached, official ownership filings, stamped and verified. Velda Murnane, listed as 100% controlling interest. Date of transfer, July 14th. I opened my calendar app. July 14th. I was still recovering from surgery that week. I barely left my apartment. Painkillers made the days blurry, but I sure as hell didn't sign over my company. Then I saw it. Page 3. A digital signature. Isolde Murnane. My name, slanted and perfect. But it wasn't mine. A tremor started at the base of my spine. I ran my fingers over the screen, half expecting it to vanish. It didn't. "You waited until I was too weak to notice," I whispered. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was quiet, cold, like a broken thermometer. That night, I didn't cry. I stared at the ceiling until the shadows shifted into dawn. A thought entered my mind like smoke under a door. If this were someone else's story, I'd call them naive. I got up, walked over to the hallway closet, and pulled out an old leather folder. It smelled like dust and ink. Inside, backups. Copies of original contracts, timestamps, a flash drive I hadn't touched in years. I sat down at the kitchen table and laid them out like a crime scene. She used my silence as permission, but that ends now. I didn't sleep that night, not in the true sense. I lay there, my eyes open, letting the glow from the hallway light leak through the door and settle across the room like fog. At some point past midnight, I pulled the backups from the table, slid them into my tote bag, and drove down to Harlan Vick's office. He owed me a favor from years back, and I didn't want another restless night wondering what else I'd missed. Harlan was already in by the time I arrived, sipping his terrible drip coffee and skimming a real estate brief. He looked up and didn't ask questions, just closed his laptop and motioned me in. We sat across from each other in his glass-walled office. I laid the documents out one by one. My original operating agreement, the recent ownership filings, a screenshot of the signature that looked like mine, but wasn't. Harlan didn't say much at first. He leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against his knee. Then he flipped to a separate page and narrowed his eyes. This power of attorney document. It's 5 years old. Wasn't this for medical emergencies only? I nodded. Post-surgery. I had it drawn up so someone could approve my hospital check-ins if I wasn't conscious. That's it. She's using it as legal authority, he said slowly. That's how she filed the transfer. My throat was dry. Is it legal? He paused. It's gray, shady, absolutely. But if no one challenged it, the system's designed to assume good faith. She didn't trick the system, I murmured. She bet I wouldn't look closely. I sat there, still as a painting, while Harlan gathered the documents into a clean folder and slid it across the desk. We'll need more than suspicion, but this gives us a foothold. Outside, the afternoon light had turned gold, the kind that makes sidewalks shimmer. I didn't go home. Instead, I stopped at a small cafe off Sunset, grabbed a tea I didn't drink, and stared at my phone. That's when it buzzed. Unknown number. No name. The message was short. It's Darcy. Burner number. Can we talk? Discreetly. Darcy Sloan. My lead stylist for 4 years. She'd gone silent since everything imploded. Her name had been missing from our shared folders, and I hadn't seen her comment on a single team chat. I'd assumed she was scared, maybe bought off. But now? I typed back, "Where?" She replied instantly. "Wilshire Rooftop, 9 p.m. No one goes there midweek." At 8:50, I was there. Jeans, hoodie, no makeup, a ball cap pulled low. I slid into a booth farthest from the bar and waited. Darcy arrived a few minutes later. She looked thinner, tired around the eyes. Her always perfect blowout traded for a quick bun. She sat without saying hello, then reached into her bag and pulled out a manila folder. "She said you'd lost it," she whispered. "Velda told us all that you were mentally unstable, that you needed time off and might not come back." I didn't interrupt. "She made it sound permanent, told us to forward clients to her, delete your access, and say nothing." I nodded once. "Why now?" Darcy looked down at her lap. "Because I was there when you built this, and because I found this." She tapped the folder. Inside were reports I had personally created, trend forecasts, client summaries, brand personas. But the headers had been rebranded with Velda's name. It was my work, stripped and dressed like hers. "She left it on the printer tray," Darcy said. "I wasn't supposed to see it, but I thought, if you ever did come back." I reached across the table and touched her hand. "Thank you for not letting her erase me entirely." "I'm sorry I didn't come sooner," she whispered. "You're here now." Back at home, I opened the backups again. The real ones, the ones that lived in the dark corners of my hard drive. I scrolled through versions, dates, original drafts. I found a concept sheet I'd written alone in my apartment during the early days, one Velda had mocked at the time, calling it too emotional for a brand. Now it was headlining our fall campaign, with her signature below it. I printed that sheet and slid it into a slim black envelope. On the front, I wrote in sharp red ink, "In case of war." I didn't feel anger, I felt precision. I didn't call Velda. I didn't send a cease and desist. I called Harlan. "Put a pause on the legal notice." "You sure?" he asked. "Yes, let her think I'm still stunned." In my home office, I opened my filing drawer and laid the envelope next to 3 others. Each one marked, each one holding a truth she thought I'd buried. If they expect silence, I'll give them the kind that detonates. I didn't slam the drawer. I closed it quietly, slid the chair back under the desk, and walked to the kitchen without turning on the lights. I made a cup of tea I didn't need, set it down untouched, and leaned against the counter. The clock on the microwave said 6:32 a.m. Sunrise was barely cracking through the blinds. I turned on the TV, something I hadn't done in weeks. The volume was low, but the moment I saw her face, I didn't need sound. Velda. There she was, seated across from a morning anchor on a plush couch, legs crossed neatly, her primrose suit catching the camera just right. Her hair was styled in waves she usually reserved for charity galas. The chyron beneath her read, Velda Murnane, fashion visionary and brand rescuer. Rescuer? The anchor smiled. You stepped in during a very delicate time at IR Studio. What gave you the strength to lead so boldly? Velda's lips curved into the smile I knew too well, an expression that only read as sincere to people who didn't grow up with her. Well, she said, when the top gets turbulent, someone has to steady the ship. I just did what had to be done. I froze, my teacup halfway to my mouth. No names, no direct accusations, just well-placed innuendo spoken with practiced ease. A little chaotic at the top. That was me. I didn't move for the rest of the segment, just stood there, letting her words drip from the screen like poison through a slow IV. By the time they cut to weather, I had replayed the interview twice. She never said my name. Not once, just leadership changes, creative instability, new vision, a sanitized eulogy for a living woman, me. I grabbed my laptop and went to the files I never trusted to the cloud. Labeled in all caps, do not delete. There, buried in archived Outlook exports, I found it. A chain of emails forwarded to me months ago. At the time, I hadn't read them carefully. I assumed it was spam. Now I opened the thread and nearly forgot to breathe. Subject: restructure options when ready. The sender: Preston Blythe, my lead investor. Recipients: Velda. No CC to me, of course not. The date: 6 months before the boardroom ambush. I scrolled. Velda's reply: when we reach Q3, I believe we'll have the internal narrative aligned. Mental fatigue, creative overextension. She'll need a sabbatical. We can frame it gently. The brand will benefit from a voice shift. She was planning my exit before I even booked the surgery. I leaned back in the chair, laptop still open, and stared at the ceiling like it might split open and explain everything. Instead, I got up and walked to the storage closet. Near the bottom shelf, in a slim white frame, sat the photo from our studio launch 5 years ago. Both of us in matching cream blazers, champagne in hand, standing in front of a branded step and repeat. I remembered how she skipped 2 key design sprints that month, telling the board she was out cultivating investor relationships. I defended her to the press, told them we worked best when we worked together. She let me carry the vision and sweat while she perfected her wave for the cameras. Looking at that photo now felt like peering into a crime scene I hadn't noticed until the blood dried. I pulled the picture from the frame, scanned it on my home printer, and texted it to Harlan. Add this to the packet, I wrote. I didn't explain, he didn't ask. Then I sat at the desk again and picked up a blank note card. Not for Instagram, not for the board, just for me. I wrote 2 lines. I didn't step down. I was stepped on. I slipped the card into an envelope, sealed it, and wrote only the name of the morning show host on the front. No return address. The rain had started by the time I got downstairs. I didn't bring an umbrella, just pulled my coat tight and walked the 2 blocks to the nearest blue USPS drop box. I slid the envelope through the metal slot and let the door thunk shut. Not dramatic, not desperate. Just deliberate. Velda had the microphone. I had the truth, and I was done whispering. The rain had stopped by morning, but the air still smelled like wet asphalt and leftover smoke from weekend bonfires. I stood at my kitchen sink, watching a bird peck at something on the fire escape railing. The city felt paused, like it was holding its breath. I sipped lukewarm coffee and stared at my inbox. Nothing urgent, nothing from anyone who mattered. That silence had started to feel like its own form of noise. At 9:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. An old contact from the studio. Not a message, just a link. I clicked it. TikTok. Of course. A 10-second clip, me mid-sentence in a conference room, talking about product timelines with a raised brow and a firm tone. It cut to another clip, me saying, "This is not up for discussion." Then another, "If you can't execute, I'll find someone who will." The caption over the video read, "Why Women Leave Toxic Female Bosses." It already had over 40,000 views. I watched it twice. The audio was chopped up just right, enough to make me look cold, sharp-edged, calculated. The kind of woman that young interns gossip about in bathrooms. My voice had always been direct. I didn't coddle people, but I'd never disrespected anyone. What got me wasn't the video, it was the wallpaper in the background. I'd picked it for the meeting room myself, olive green with pale gray arcs. Someone had recorded me from inside the building, someone I trusted. That stung deeper than the comments calling me a walking red flag in heels. I closed the video and tossed the phone onto the couch. That evening, I pulled a black sheath dress from the back of the closet and steamed it. No jewelry, no glitter, just clean lines and quiet defiance. I was going to the LA Fashion Circle Gala. 3 years ago, I'd helped plan the first one. I still had the spreadsheet templates on my desktop. Velda hadn't attended the planning meetings. Too busy nurturing press connections, she'd said. I arrived just past 7. The valet recognized me, smiled, took my keys. As I stepped onto the carpet, I saw familiar faces, models, stylists, editors, but most averted their eyes when I passed. At the entry table, a young woman with a headset tapped her tablet. Name? Isolde Murnane. She frowned slightly, tapped again, then shook her head. I'm sorry, you're not on the list. I pulled out my phone, opened the gala site, clicked into the schedule. My name was gone. No mention in the co-founder credits, no panel appearance, no thank you. I didn't argue, didn't ask to be let in. I stepped back, walked around the building, and found the loading dock entrance. A security guard stood half asleep inside. I nodded, breezed past like I belonged, and slipped behind the velvet curtain near the stage. From there, I watched. Velda walked out to a round of applause, a champagne-colored gown hugging her figure, her makeup perfect under the lights. She took the mic with practiced ease. This event, this industry means everything to me, she said. I've always believed in vision, and when others couldn't see it, I kept moving forward. They clapped louder. When the MC handed her the award for Visionary Creative, she touched her heart and smiled like she'd just rescued kittens from a flood. I didn't stay to hear the rest. I left through the back and drove home with my hands clenched at 10 and 2. Back at my apartment, I didn't change out of my dress. I poured water into a glass, sat at my desk, and opened a new email. Subject, regarding recent events to the IR Studio Board, primary investors, strategic sponsors. I outlined 3 things. A timeline of proprietary design files she'd rebranded as her own. The POA she misused while I was recovering in the hospital. A scanned thread of emails where she and Preston discussed my removal. The body of the email was clear. Calm, unapologetic, no threats, just a line. If my name continues to be used without legal and ethical grounds, I will proceed accordingly. I didn't hit send, not yet. I saved the draft and labeled it, Final Warning, 1.0. As I leaned back in my chair, I glanced at the wall, an old photo of me at a launch event laughing mid-sentence. I looked tired even then. My phone buzzed. A text. Velda. Hope you enjoyed the show tonight. You looked reserved. I stared at the message for a while, then typed, The next time you say my name, say it right, or don't say it at all. No reply. But the 3 little dots blinked for a moment, then disappeared. That was enough. Because when silence follows a threat, it's never peace. It's preparation. I woke to a calendar alert that shouldn't have existed. It was flagged for PR review, a detail from the press distribution platform I hadn't used in months. I nearly dismissed it, assuming it was a residual glitch. But curiosity had a sharper edge these days. I clicked. And there it was. The draft press release for Velda Murnane's upcoming capsule line. She'd named it Midnight Slate. My title, my design, my work, the same fluid silhouettes I'd pored over in my loft studio when the city was asleep. The same mood board I'd mounted on foam core during recovery, whispering to myself that this would be the comeback line, the one that put my name back where it belonged. Now, it was Velda's headline. I reread the summary twice, my hand hovering over the trackpad. My first reaction wasn't disbelief. Not anymore. That was gone. It was cold, measured fury. I called Trevor, my old liaison in brand licensing. He sounded hesitant even before he spoke. I thought you signed off, Isolde. Someone said you'd stepped away from the brand, that Velda had full rights to move forward. I let a silence sit between us before saying, I stepped away to breathe, not to be buried. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I should have checked. No, she should have stopped. I hung up, not because I was done, but because anything more would have sounded like begging. By midday, it was no longer about press drafts. My assistant forwarded me an email chain. Mila Farran's team had officially pulled her from the spring campaign. The reason? Brand instability and narrative concerns. Translated, Velda was whispering stories again. I called Mila's agent myself, bypassing the layers. I'm not calling to ask for her back, I said before she could get polite. I just want the truth. She hesitated. There's been talk, something about internal conflict, and Mila can't afford that kind of heat right now. I understand, I replied. And I did. But understanding doesn't equal forgiveness. After the call ended, I opened my project archive, not to dwell but to reload. I pulled up the original Midnight Slate drafts. The color palette names were mine: Hushed Graphite, Blue Char. Each design file stamped and dated with my initials, my rhythm. I printed the mood boards one by one, taping them to the walls of my home office again. No dramatic music, just the sound of the printer humming steadily like a quiet war drum. Then I wrote a new narrative. This wasn't a revival, this was reclamation. I labeled the folder, From Stolen to Reborn. I didn't stop there. That evening, as streetlights flickered on outside and the sky dimmed into slate gray, I sat down at my desk and assembled 3 thick packets. The first was addressed to the Brand Licensing Oversight Council. Inside, timestamps, screenshots, side-by-side design comparisons. The second, urgent, fraudulent attribution to the global head of the fashion PR platform Velda had misused. And the third, confidential, to Mila herself. No anger in the tone, just facts that burned clean. I printed a cover page for each. This isn't retaliation, it's correction. I slid each packet into a flat envelope and lined them up like chess pieces waiting to move. I didn't need a crowd, I didn't need a podium, and I definitely didn't need Velda's permission. As I sealed the last one, I whispered, if she thinks silence is survival, she's never heard the sound of everything coming back. It wasn't a threat, it was gravity, and gravity never asks for permission. I dropped the envelopes into the mail drop outside my building the next morning. The sky was overcast, and the wind had picked up, but I didn't pull my coat tighter. I wanted to feel every ounce of that chill, because I had been too warm, too soft, too hopeful. Not anymore. I played fair long enough. Now it was my turn to speak, and I wouldn't need a microphone. 3 days after I dropped the evidence packets into the mailbox, the wind shifted. I felt it not in the air, but in the way people started texting again. No hello, no how are you, just links. Are you okay? They're talking about you again. I tapped the first link. My thumb hovered over the screen longer than it should have. The thumbnail was a still frame. My face flushed, eyes rimmed in red, mouth caught mid-breath. I recognized the room. I recognized the moment. That was the day Fiona, my longest-serving project manager, had come in crying. Her father had passed, and she needed to leave indefinitely. I'd hugged her in the staff lounge, then closed the door and sat down. Alone. And let the tears fall. Silent, brief, human. Now it was online. A 30-second clip, no sound, just some lo-fi piano music layered beneath it. The caption read, "When the boss breaks down, the team breaks too." The view count was climbing by the second. I watched the video again, trying to see myself the way strangers were seeing me. Weak, melodramatic, disconnected. I saw none of that. But I knew how the internet worked. Nobody cared about context. They cared about spectacle. And this was Velda's idea of a finale. She didn't just want control. She wanted a character assassination. I tossed the phone on the couch and stared out the window. Downtown buzzed below. The very city that once clapped when I took a bow now scrolled through my grief like it was part of the show. Later that afternoon, I got word about Velda's press preview, a closed-door media event for her brand's relaunch. No invite for me, of course, but I'd made peace with that. What burned wasn't the exclusion, it was the spectacle of it all. I saw a photo from the event in someone's Instagram story. The shot was wide, staged. Velvet couches, orchid arrangements, curated lighting. And at the back, one single chair, empty, spotlighted, symbolic. Or maybe just cruel. Velda never mentioned me by name, But the script was clear. We're focusing on stability now. It's a new chapter, one rooted in clarity. We've found our rhythm. I wondered if the empty chair was meant for me, or a ghost version of me, one they could haunt at will. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, sat cross-legged in my kitchen, and opened my inbox. Buried between spam and promo codes was a message with a name I hadn't seen in months. Subject, "Let's talk. Lauren Benford." I blinked. Lauren was one of the earliest investors who'd once declined our second round, said we were a little volatile for her taste. She wasn't wrong at the time. The message was short. I had dinner with Velda last week. Something didn't sit right. So I started reading between the lines, and then I started asking questions. I believe you. I've formally withdrawn from the upcoming launch and informed the media. I expect they'll be calling soon. Stay steady. I think this thing's about to flip. I stared at the screen, reading it again, then again. Not relief, not yet. Just a sense of shift, a crack in the glass, a sign that Velda's fortress wasn't made of stone. It was made of mirrors. By midnight, Fashion Press had picked it up. Investor walks out on Murnane label. Quiet shakeup behind the runway glam. The other sister speaks in silence. I didn't need headlines. I didn't need vindication. But the silence that had been weaponized against me? It was starting to turn. The next morning, I set up a single soft light in my home office. No stylist, no filters, just me, a plain background, and a laptop camera. I looked into the lens and hit record. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I walked through the timeline. How the designs began. Who wrote what? The time-stamped files. The medical absence Velda used to file false paperwork. Then I paused, took a breath, and I ended with one sentence. Control isn't leadership. It's fear in disguise, and it looks a lot like a smile. I uploaded the video, unchecked the private box, and clicked publish. No flashy hashtags, no call to action, just the truth. And that has a way of echoing, long after the noise dies down. The morning after my video went public, I didn't check the comments. I didn't look at the view count either. I turned off every notification, closed my laptop, and made tea like it was any other day. Because when you've already been shredded by public opinion once, the noise stops meaning anything. It's what comes after that counts. 2 days later, my phone buzzed, an alert I hadn't silenced. A colleague forwarded a podcast clip. Velda's voice, confident, crisp. I saved the brand when my sister lost control, she said, like she was talking about a faulty engine instead of a human being. No stutter, no hesitation. She believed every syllable. That clip was everywhere within an hour. She'd given me everything I needed, and she didn't even know it. By the time the arbitration hearing was scheduled, I had already reviewed every file with Harlan twice. I chose a beige pantsuit, no jewelry, my hair pinned back, no distractions. The hearing took place in a nondescript glass building downtown. Neutral walls, neutral air, but not a neutral purpose. Velda arrived first, heels clicking like punctuation marks. Her lips curled slightly when she saw me, then vanished as soon as she caught sight of my box of documents. No press, no cameras, just 2 appointed arbiters, 2 attorneys, and 2 sisters pretending not to know what the other was capable of. Velda's lawyer opened first, launching into brand language, financial projections, and stability narratives. Then Harlan stood. He didn't waste time. These documents, he said, spreading them out across the table, are time-stamped, witnessed, filed legally. My client did not relinquish her creative rights, nor her status as co-founder. The IPO filed under Miss Murnane alone is fraudulent. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. One of the arbiters leaned forward. Is this signature yours, Miss Murnane? She asked, turning the document toward Velda. Velda's jaw twitched. I interpreted. Please answer yes or no. Her voice thinned. No. They didn't call a recess. They didn't need to. The ruling came before lunch. I was reinstated as co-founder with full legal standing. Velda's solo IPO was suspended indefinitely. As we left the room, Velda tried to make eye contact. I gave her nothing. Outside, reporters buzzed around the building. They didn't call out to me. They called to Marjorie, who kept her head down and slipped into a waiting car like someone leaving a crime scene. That evening, I sat on the balcony, city lights flickering like tiny truths. I hadn't cried. I hadn't shouted. But something heavy had lifted. My inbox pinged with a new message. The National Women in Design Summit wanted me as their keynote speaker. I didn't even open the message. I just stared at the subject line for a while. I whispered to myself, I didn't win by screaming, I won by staying human. Sometimes the loudest thing you can do is not become the very thing that tried to erase you. The morning fog in Santa Monica hung low that day, curling around my windows like a reminder that nothing ever fully clears. I didn't mind. Some things are meant to stay partially hidden. I was sipping coffee at the kitchen island when the envelope arrived. No postage, no return label, just my name, written in a hand I hadn't seen in a while. Inside, a single note. I know I didn't always see clearly. I hope someday we can talk. Marjorie's handwriting. Slanted, delicate, still trying to sound soft after all this time. I didn't read it twice. I folded the paper and slid it into the drawer beneath my calendar. Not in anger, but with finality. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She wasn't even admitting fault. She just wanted to leave a breadcrumb, in case I ever felt like walking backward. I had no plans to follow that trail. 3 weeks later, I stood backstage at the National Women in Design Summit, holding a handheld mic while a producer whispered time cues in my ear. There were rows of women out there, young, old, seasoned, skeptical, waiting to hear what I had to say. But I wasn't here to perform revenge. I was here to reclaim a truth that never needed shouting to begin with. I walked onto the stage in a simple black dress. No slides, no videos. Just me and a memory that had been stitched back together thread by thread. I've learned that ownership doesn't begin with a signature. It begins with intention, I told them. You don't need to be louder than betrayal, just clearer than silence. No one applauded at first. They just listened. And sometimes that's the most sacred response there is. Afterward, people lined up to thank me, not for the drama, but for the honesty. One woman hugged me and whispered, "That could have been me 5 years ago." I smiled. Maybe it still is you, but now you know how it ends. 2 Sundays later, I sat at a sidewalk cafe near the Palisades, the kind of place where you could hear the ocean if you leaned in just right. Across the table, my father and Marjorie. It was the first time I'd seen them together since the arbitration. No one brought up Velda. No one dared. Instead, we talked about a new Mediterranean place that opened on Lincoln, and how I used to cry over spaghetti when my crayon drawings didn't hang on the fridge long enough. It was strange, how memory worked as both a balm and a blade. Toward the end, my father placed his coffee cup down and looked at me carefully. "You built something you didn't need to prove," he said, "but we needed to see it to believe." I didn't respond, just nodded once. That was enough. That night, I returned home, kicked off my shoes, and lit the lavender candle by the bookshelf. The apartment felt fuller somehow, not because anyone else was here, but because I finally was. On the kitchen counter sat a plain white envelope with my name typed on it. Inside was a note from Mila Ferran. "I left for the wrong reasons. If you'll have me, I'd like to walk your runway." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't groveling, just a simple request to start again, on the right terms this time. I exhaled, slow and full. Peace didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean welcoming everyone back like nothing had happened. It just meant knowing the hurt had a place to rest now, instead of pacing my ribs every night. Forgiveness? Maybe, but only for myself, because you don't forgive to free them. You forgive to clear the space they no longer get to take up. Some stories don't end with justice. They end with peace, and that's enough. And if I could leave you with just one truth, it's this. Strength doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks like standing still when the world tries to move you. Sometimes it's choosing not to become what hurt you. I used to think justice had to be loud, dramatic, with people clapping and villains falling apart. But real justice? Real peace? It's quieter than that. It's knowing who you are when everything tries to tell you otherwise, and choosing to stay. So let me ask you, have you ever been erased, overlooked, or replaced by someone who thought your silence was weakness? What did you do with that pain? Did it make you bitter, or did it make you better? I'd love to hear your story. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. If this story touched your heart, leave a 1 in the comments. And if it didn't, tell me why. I'm listening. And if you're new here, subscribe to the channel, because every week we share real stories like this. Stories of betrayal, resilience, redemption, and above all, the quiet kind of power that changes everything. Don't miss the next one. You might just find a piece of yourself in it. Subscribe now, and let's walk through these stories together.